President Trump and the comfort women, many people are asking about that, the comfort women issue that he mentioned.
This is right, but the whole issue of the women, comfort women, very specifically, we talked, and that was a very big problem for Korea, not for Japan. Japan wanted to go. They want to get on, but Korea was very stuck on that. You understand? So I don't know. Perhaps you'd like to answer. It's a good question.
Some people have asked for more clarification on what the comfort women issue is. First of all, my qualifications on it. You're not going to find many people that know more about it than me, actually, because I've written 3 books on it. So these are 3 books that I've published only in Japanese. They're not even in English and there's reasons for that. It's because I was working to wake up Japanese and Koreans and others to it more than Americans. But I spent significant time working to wake up Americans to it as well. President Trump's talking points are basically our talking points. This is actually a comfort women statue. You can see on the previous video that I just put up yesterday, I've got more about this. Now, how did I get involved in the comfort women issue? In 2014, there was heavy fighting in Thailand, and with a lot of death and injuries, and I was in the middle of it as per normal. And Al Johnson, former EOD Army officer, Iraq vet, he saw what I was doing, and he flew with one of his teammates to Thailand. Actually, he spent a lot of time in Thailand as well, advising Thai police and military on various counterterrorism matters and that sort of thing. And one of the biggest components of warfare is information war. Everybody on my channel knows that. Information war is, that's it. And that's the real WMD right there. And well, not that hydrogen bombs aren't WMD and death jabs. There are many forms of WMD, but information war is what has opened the channels for people, for instance, to jab themselves. There are people that are very good at information war and have been since long before any of us were born. In fact, they were very good at it a couple thousand years ago. So there's nothing that you're going to learn probably that wasn't known before the printing press was invented, right? So, the technology has changed. Like, we have radios now and that sort of thing, and televisions and other Skinner boxes, as Al likes to call, the smartphones and whatnot. But there's so many information wars going on, and one of those, a key information war, and the information wars are out there for different reasons. A lot of them are just local. They're, somebody doesn't want their marshland destroyed, so they're doing something locally, but somebody larger may notice that and then bring them into a larger ecosystem of information war that deals with, say, global warming, which is actually has to do with other things, routes and resources. But one key component to these intense information wars that are going on in Asia, which bleed over to the United States as well, is about the ascendancy of China. China is clearly growing. Now, I know, Doug McGregor will often say, I'm overstating things. He messaged me this morning about something. We communicate quite professionally and often together, but we differ massively about China, massively. And he'll say that I'm overstating it. China is not expansionist and all that. Doug, that's false. That is absolutely false. And going to some place like Tibet, which I've done, or Hong Kong or Taiwan, we'll be back there again soon. They're clearly expansionist. Ask the Uyghurs in Xinjiang. Go to Bhutan, which I've done. Bhutan's being pressured. Nepal's being salami sliced. China is highly expansionist. They're expanding faster than the universe. Panama and on. Argentina, they're not the only ones. I'm not saying that they have a monopoly on it. That would be untrue to the nth degree. But they are. They are among those who are. Most former imperial powers have collapsed. Like the British Empire is, it's gone. It's basically a pile of ashes at this point. And the Spanish, of course, did that long ago. and the Portuguese. They were the original gangsters, I guess you might say, when it came to real globalism, and they collapsed a long time ago. And so people have come and gone, the Dutch, of course, and so many. And now the United States clearly is following a similar path. And part of this is due to information war and unchecked information war, which we're fighting. I mean, because I'm American and I'm hardcore American, and so is Al Johnson. And so we're fighting for the United States and for our people, but we're not exclusively, at the expense of the world type stuff. We want to stay in sector one, basically help others and help ourselves, the good sector of quadrant one that I've talked about before, such as yesterday on the podcast. So I've written 3 books on comfort women. I've written 3 books. They're only in Japanese. They're not in English because I've worked so hard to wake up Japanese and Koreans and others that this information war is, and I've written a lot in English though, which is published online and in different formats, either just online on my websites or social media, or actually articles like one is called The Hate Farm. China is planting a bitter harvest, I think is the name. That was a very interesting one. Man in the High Castle, that was another that I published, not the book or the movie, but similar. And so this is a comfort women statue right here. I have met with the man and wife that makes those in Seoul. I had lunch with them. This is a husband and wife team in Seoul, South Korea that actually makes comfort women statues. I was introduced to them by one of the leaders of the information operation, and so I had lunch with them. So I'm making these photos and some video, as I recall, with their permission. And so now the wife is about to present me with a tiny statue of a comfort woman. But they make about $30,000 per statue. They've installed them all over the world. They're making a fortune. They were introduced to me by this lady, Yoon Mi Hong, and this lady, Yoon, she's sort of the main ringleader of this information operation in Korea. Now she's, whether she knows it or not, she's being operated by North Korea and China. I don't know if she knew that. In any case, later she was embroiled in great controversy. I'm not going to say much about it. You can find it online. Because this could get contentious quickly on lawsuits and whatnot. But as you can see, she let me into her office, showed me the maps and all sorts of things. She seems to have assumed that since I'm a white man that I am some liberal that flew in to help them out with their operation against Japan and the United States. Those people, the people running the Comfort Women operation, they hate the United States. So this is the husband and wife team who make the statues. I don't know if they hate the United States, but the people running the operation, they hate Japan and they hate the United States and they hate Korea, believe it or not. The people that are really running the operation. I'm not talking about the cult suckers out there because it's millions. But this is the statue they presented me at lunch that day in Seoul, Korea, and it's a little plastic statue that I still have. And they would every Wednesday for, I don't know, more than 25 years, they have a protest in front of the Japanese embassy there in Seoul. It's epic. It's nothing but cult. There's one of the comfort women. They're pulling her out of the van. I was there. I made this photo, and she practically fell and face planted. That's the Miss Yoon that was pulling her out. There she is. They set one of the comfort women, sometimes 2 or 3 of them, in front of the crowd every Wednesday, and she sits like the statue. And it is really epic cult stuff. It's actually horrible. They keep these comfort women like basically farm animals. They're basically treated like Holocaust victims. So, in other words, it's part of this huge scam. The Catholic Church is deeply involved. They're there every Wednesday. Actually, they're there often during the week and late at night because people camp out beside the statues. And so I've been to the seminary there also in Seoul where they have another statue. So they have these displays all over Seoul. This is at a bus stop it was a bus stop. And here I am with Andrew Salmon, a friend of mine. He's a pretty famous author, very serious author. And he's in Korea right now. I talked with him just yesterday. But so he knows a great deal about this as well. Now, it's interesting that the comfort women thing is allegedly about wartime sex slavery, but this statue is just down the road from the sex slave statue, the comfort women, but there are whores all over Korea. I mean, Korea is famous for whores. This is in their whore district, and it's just down the road. But the Catholic Church is not there. They're not there protesting this. They're there milking the United States and Japan using the comfort women information war, and they're doing it ultimately in service to China. This lady, whether she knows it or not, ultimately is working for China. And she, again, was embroiled in much, there she is. I made this photo as well. She's embroiled in much conflict. That's the cult behind her on Wednesday, one of the Wednesdays. I was there on 3 of the Wednesdays. Here's the comfort women. They're pulling her out. One of the comfort women pulling her out, setting her in the chair. They sit there, very uncomfortably. And there it is. There's the cult. You'll see members of the cult will sing to these statues. They bring food to them. They hang umbrellas over them when it's raining. They cry with them. They read poetry to them. And you can see here it is. The 1400th week of Comfort Women Rally draws thousands in Seoul. And again, that was what year was that? I can't quite read it, but there's been many more since then. Here they are, camped out 24/7, rain or shine, right beside the statue. I would be out there talking with them at 2 in the morning. And as you can see, she wrote a book you can see on the bottom right, 25 Years of Wednesdays. But that was in 2019, and this continues. So it was 25 years in 2019. And actually, on that note, let me take a quick break for a shameless plea for funding. I absolutely need funding. I put on my dress poncho for this plea. And you can see where I'm talking about going to Korea and Darien Gap and Morocco and all these different places that it requires to do research. We're talking airplane flights, obviously hotels, interpreters, taxis, meals. Sometimes I have to fly people to me or with me. I don't go to all the places. Sometimes I have the sources come to me for various reasons. And these things are expensive, super expensive. And this beautiful haircut. The sorts of things, helicopters, airplanes where I'm down the Darien Gap or whatever, boats, these things really add up big time. But as you can see, the information is strategic. It's very important. And look how accurate it is. So basically, we're going up into the jungle, panning for information gold, and we end up with incredible predictions that turn out to be incredibly accurate. So look at the comfort women issue that President Trump talked about. Our team, Al Johnson first got the idea for that, back in roughly 2014. We have been on this ever since. This and other issues. This is strategic. It's a strategic issue. The fact that Trump has mentioned it at least twice should tell you something, and it's going to have effects. And by the way, there are things unfolding now down in the Gulf of Mexico area, in Panama and other places that I'm not going to talk about now, but just be assured things are unfolding down there. And let me get back to the main video, but I just decided to stop when I talked about watching the statue, going and seeing these people, all the interpreters and the weeks that I would keep in mind. By the time I go to a place like Korea, I've done many months of research. In fact, in that case, I don't know, a year or two of research before I went to meet with her. It was quite a lot. So by the time I was in her office, I was extremely well prepared. And by the time I'm, hanging out with that cult in front of the Comfort Women statue, I was very well prepared. And so, again, this takes a lot of time, and I need your help. It's very important, very important. My page continues to be free. I'm just going to leave it free because there's a lot of people that need the information that just can't afford it. And it's life or death. It's life or death. And the people that can't afford it, please do afford it. The people who cannot afford it, we'll just keep pushing it out there. Just share it. That's how you can pay everybody back. The people that are paying the way for those who can't afford it monetarily, one way that you can pay it back is just to share it, just to share the links and to push it out there. That's a huge help. Thank you very much. Now we're going to get back to the issue. Please hit Venmo, PayPal, Give, Send, Go, subscribe to Substack. Obviously, you can subscribe for free, or please, actually, if you can afford it, pay. And you don't have to pay the minimum amount. You can pay more if you'd like, and I would really appreciate that. You can send checks. You can photograph the check front and back and email it to me at michael.yon@protonmail.com, which is listed below. There's many ways you can do it. Direct wire transfers, and they're all listed below, including Bitcoin, which nobody really ever sends that, but you can do Bitcoin if you want. It's dropping off the cliff right now, by the way. I mean, you can see the prices plummeting again for Bitcoin. You can send precious metals. I could send you an address where to send the precious metals. If you have any laying around that you want to clean out the drawers of your gold and silver, please send it. I can absolutely use it. This is going to get expensive, and the more funding that I have, the more that we can do. And so, because this is not, I mean, there's a lot more we can do with a lot more funding, and that's the bottom line. They make $30,000 each, or at least they did at that time, installing those, and then they make it's just a whole business model. But the comfort women issue, what is it? Where did it come from? I got involved again when Al Johnson flew over with one of his teammates and briefed me for several days in Bangkok at the end of the fighting season, and my schedule was clear again because the people were the funerals had already been had, and the new government was installed, actually. And then Al came in telling me about this thing, the comfort women, which he gave me quite a bit of evidence, and it took me a while to research it, which I did, and then I jumped in with both feet because it was obviously a major information campaign which would have major effects. What is it? Comfort women in Japanese are Ianfu. It means comfort women. Or Ianjo is the brothels. So we're talking about prostitutes, right? And so Korea was part of Japan back during World War II and had been for a solid generation. And there were Korean generals and the Japanese military. In fact, they were Japanese citizens, just like Texans are U.S. citizens. Now, I've said that before, and some people go, you don't understand anything about Texas and Korea if you compare those together. But actually, I do. Actually, I do. And I do a lot. And it is very similar, actually. It's not the same, but it's quite similar to Korea was its own country. It got absorbed by Japan with Korean agreement at the time. They became Texans were U.S. citizens, are U.S. citizens, and Koreans became Japanese citizens. They were elected officials. They were police officers, high ranking. They were generals in the Japanese military. They went to Japanese schools. They were free to move back and forth between Korea and Japan, just like Texans can move to Ohio, right? They were that free. It was, you are now full Japanese. And that's what they were. They're like straight up Japanese. And so they got the keys to the kingdom, actually. So anyway, World War II comes around, which was interesting in and of itself. That was a programmed war that was part of the larger menu that we had been plotting and planning for generations, WarPlan Orange and before. And World War II kicks off with the staked goat green flag attack on Pearl Harbor. We absolutely induced that. A lot of people still don't realize that somehow. I don't know how they don't still realize that, but it just what our education system tells us, that basically our people were out there just fishing that day, and the Japanese showed up and started attacking our innocent people in the state of Hawaii, which was not a state. It was not even the United States. It was but they that was absolutely a planned attack, just like October 7th in Israel. It was is that shutting off there? And so this was part of our plan, WarPlan Orange, to conquer Japan. In any case, during the war, Japanese, they were very effective. They did simultaneous or near simultaneous attacks in Malaysia, Indonesia, Australia, Philippines, Singapore, Pearl Harbor, of course. Where else? Quite a few other places. Quite a few, actually. It was a substantial list. I mean, very few countries could pull that off even today. And so, I mean, they should have been on our side, and Japan wanted to be on our side, strongly wanted to be on our side. But our oligarchs, who are also ruling Americans like slaves, wanted Japan to be defeated, because this was about routes and resources. This was not about making friends. This was about taking Japan. So anyway, Japanese, the war's going on. And of course, at that point, Taiwan was also part of Japan, Formosa. And so the Japanese, like Americans, they employed comfort women, prostitutes, right? Now, keep in mind, prostitution was legal in Japan at that time. United States had prostitutes at Hotel Street in Honolulu, and openly. Our military was running brothels for U.S. citizens, for U.S. troops. And you should read. We've researched that in some detail. They would take American women. Americans would take American military. It was run by a major, as I recall. I've forgotten his name. But he was like in charge of the program, as I recall. And they would take American women from like California or other parts of America. They would go to Honolulu. They were not allowed to go to the golf courses, where the officers are doing, golfing with their wives or whatever. They were not allowed to go to certain parts of Honolulu. They had to stay in their part. They didn't want any, unfortunate, meetups with the girl from California who's actually the prostitute for some officer, accidentally bumps into her wife type stuff. The American prostitutes had to stay in their lane, right? And they did this. Remember, the term hooker came from, General Hooker, the hooker's following, his army around, right? So it's not like the United States, when it came to Japanese doing this, we're like, whoa, those people are terrible. Meanwhile, our military's straight up since the edge of time been doing this. And, how many of our cowboy movies have saloon girls in them? I mean, so it's absolutely, suddenly we're clutching pearls when the Japanese do it. And the Japanese didn't look at it the way Americans looked at it, by the way. They look at it more like, it's more like, it's your job if that's what you want to do. And for some people, like the high-level prostitutes, they were actually looked upon as high-level members of society, actually. And so just normal businessmen would have to, turn their eyes away when the high-level prostitutes go by. It's a totally different world. And in any case, Japanese, during the war, they started their comfort women program, Ianfu. And so the comfort women, why did Japanese have organized prostitutes? The same reason Americans did it. Because STDs, sexually transmitted diseases, can wipe out your army, and have done this many times, right? So the next thing you know, gonorrhea, whatever. You should see all of the U.S. military stuff that we have from different periods of time, whether it's Panama or whatever, warning soldiers about STDs and warning about this, that, and the other. And so, and warning about the prostitutes. If you want prostitutes, you go to this part of Panama City, and the girls will be taken care of for you, right? So they're medically examined by the U.S. military. So when the Japanese start doing this, we're like, oh no, pearl clutching everywhere. So there's things about getting girls in the wild. Let's say got a bunch of 19-year-old soldiers, testosterone machines, and they're young men and they're testosterone machines. And what you don't want is them getting local girls from local villages and causing war in the background, right? Which will obviously happen, especially when you got troops deployed all over the world. So that's one thing that the Japanese were concerned about, just like our military was concerned about. You don't want your men, like for instance, you didn't see in the Iraq and Afghan wars, our soldiers were not out picking up village girls. If they were, that would have started a war lickety-split. I mean, it would have been a whole total another level of war. And so keep in mind, our soldiers and Japanese were fighting all over the place. So they wanted to bring their girls with them for that reason. So you don't want to create the war in the background. Another is STDs, of course. So the girls are tested and that sort of thing. And another is espionage, because the one of the biggest ways of milking the enemy for information is brothels. We were doing that in Iraq. I probably wasn't supposed to know these things, but the U.S. was doing it in Iraq. They were running brothels in Baghdad and that sort of thing. And I got some of the key background on it. It was quite interesting. Some of them were gay brothels. It's interesting how and with women as well. It's interesting how the some of the Muslims, like in Iraq, would run their brothels. You have to get married to the girl before you have sex with her, and then you get divorced. So they'll have they'll have the facilities in the brothel where you come in, you get married, you do your thing, and then you get divorced. Can't make up the stuff. It's cultural. It's basically lawyering up with God, right? You're like, okay, God, we have officially done these things, and we have, crossed the T's and dotted. That's what happens when you get lawyers involved. So, like lawyering up with God, I call it. I've seen that since I was a kid. People will, anyway. So those are some of the reasons. STDs, espionage, because we were using those brothels in Baghdad and other places to gather information. And so they were very effective. You can find out so many things. And that's why the U.S. military, that's why the Japanese and others had these programs. And the Japanese women, the Japanese, most of the Ianfu that the Japanese soldiers wanted to have were actually Japanese, because Japanese prefer Japanese women. And actually a lot of them, a lot of them didn't even want to have sex. They're just like big sister, little brother type stuff, right? They wanted somebody. They're very family oriented people. They're like away from their family the first time. They're going to be like a kamikaze pilot or something or whatever. They're probably not coming back, and they know it. I mean, it was psychological. The Japanese have a different way of looking at prostitutes than Americans do. Comfort women as opposed to prostitutes. They don't even call them prostitutes. They call them comfort women. So to give you comfort. So a lot of them actually got married with them and that sort of thing. But but as prostitutes or comfort women, they made a lot of money. A lot. We've got some of their old records. They were making more money than like a lieutenant general and a major combined. I mean, literally more than a top level Japanese general and a field grade officer combined. Some of them were making so much money they didn't want to go home. There were women that were trying to be Ianfu, but mostly they were Japanese. Now keep in mind, the next choice on the sort, you might say, menu was Koreans, but the Japanese troops preferred Japanese women. So most of the Ianfu were Japanese. And then the Koreans, and then came more local women like Thais and that sort of thing, because there was like, I don't know, a couple 100,000 Japanese troops in Thailand, because Thailand was part of the Axis power, actually, believe it or not. And so they had these Ianfu all over the place. And anyway, after the war, I mean, our Office of War Information, it was something I published more than 10 years ago, documents from our IOW, it was sort of like old CIA before CIA was born. It was OSS type stuff. We had spy teams running around Burma trying to dig up real dirt on Japanese to do atrocity porn, which is just a normal thing. But we're trying to actually get truthful stuff, because truthful stuff is even, it's easier to sell even. And so we got some of the original records from Ianfu, and the Americans are like, even in our own records, they're just like, basically they're prostitutes. And some of them, like when the Japanese soldiers had to, they were being defeated and had to leave, the Ianfu were like desperate to catch up to them. They wanted to stay with the Japanese. So in any case, at some point in the 70s, as I recall, the Yoshido Seiji, he was a Japanese communist. He wrote that they had kidnapped 203 women from a bean factory on Jeju Island in Korea. Let me fast forward, because I could go on for days about this. This all blossomed into, and that turned out to be completely false, by the way, utterly false. I've actually been to Jeju researching it, as have many, many more. In any case, this whole thing blew up into a magnificent information war. And you can see different inflection points in the information war. One inflection point is Tiananmen Square on June 4th. After the Tiananmen Square attack, when Chinese massacred huge numbers of students and young people who wanted freedom, the world was like, hey, China, what did you just do? I mean, you just massacred a huge number of Chinese students, and everybody was angry. Americans were absolutely livid. The Europeans were livid. Other Asians were livid. China was like, uh-oh, what do you do when everybody's pointing fingers at you? Point fingers at Japanese. They said, what about those comfort women? That was a clear inflection point in the information war. And you can see that actually if you take time with what I'm telling you and you take notes and you look up mentions, for instance, and say, newspaper.com or keyword, the dates that you'll see that, when people really start to talk about it, you'll see June 4th when the Tiananmen Square happens and we get into the early 90s and you see some, inflection point, boom, like China starts to go full bore at Japan. Now, keep in mind, there's a long history of this, of whatever China accuses. Nobody believes China when they say anything. I've got this one book from 1938. What's the title? The author is saying in there, I've mentioned it before, he's saying that nobody believes China when they talk about anything until they point an accusing finger at Japan. So this journalist was in China at the time. He's like, nobody believes China because they just lie all the time. They don't even have a word for lying, And so and then except when they say something bad about Japan, which is interesting because he had also described how Japan is actually one of the most honest cultures it's the most honest that I've actually run across is Japanese. And they're not all honest. I mean, there's big old lies here too. But when it comes to the general, like on the bell curve of honesty versus lying, I mean, Japan is, a couple standard deviations into the honest range. They're extraordinarily honest compared to most cultures. They got their fraudsters here, just like anywhere else. But but on the bell curve, the whole thing is moved over. But there are other cultures that are the opposite. They're going and that would be, for instance, China, and Korea actually is well known for it. And I talked with one Japanese American. He's about 90 now, but he's he's always felt he's Japanese. He used to live in Archie Miyamoto. He used to live in Korea, and he was retired from the U.S. military and that sort of thing. And we talked about this many times, and he felt kind of bad for the Koreans. He said, yeah, they lie a lot, but he's like, I lived in Korea a long time. I love the Koreans, and they're great, and they do lie a lot. They're pretty famous for it. But they've been pushed down by so many people. They've always been pushed down, and people that get pushed down a lot will lie a lot. It's just, and I've noticed that too. The people that have been enslaved and that sort of thing, they will tend to lie a lot. They will, and I think it's a survival mechanism. And Archie had a lot of compassion for him, as do I actually, because they didn't get there by accident. So you'll see the victimhood trait is quite thick in Korea. Not all of them. Koreans have very strong souls. They have very strong families. They have a lot of strength to them, but they've also got firmware issues due to their past. Somehow back there in the past, they have really look at where they're situated. Geography is a big component of what happens to people. Let's go over to Poland, where I lived for 2 years. Poland is in a place, it's like a tidal zone where wars wash in and out of Poland, right? And here in Japan, they were more isolated, obviously. It's a big series of islands, and they're big enough to have significant culture, but they're isolated enough that you can actually, there's a lot of people that live out on these islands around the world that are quite savage and still do cannibalism, right? They don't do that in Japan, but somehow the Japanese ended up being a very advanced society. And I wonder all the time how they got to this level. I don't know, and I really want to know. And but anyway, they are. And then there are others, and one of the things that I've noticed that may be related is that people that get smashed, and Archie Miyamoto noticed the same thing. He wrote a book about the same issues, and the people that have been smashed a lot, enslaved, and that sort of thing will tend to lie more. And I noticed that, and then Archie noticed it independently, and so that was interesting. And he loves Koreans, and I do too. Koreans are great people, but there's different cultures, and the Koreans will tell you they will have that trait more than Japanese, and also there's that the way neighbors always fight each other and have these animosities and that sort of thing. That's just normal. One of the main indicators of war, by the way, is just being neighbors. I mean, if if your neighbor is the most peaceful person in the world, sooner or later, 5 generations later or something, they're going to have a war about something. It's going to be the trees, or, it's going to be something. Neighbors just fight each other. They just do. And there were reasons why Japan actually had to take Korea if they wanted to survive, because the Russians were going to come down. And anyway, not to go into that, but it was geostrategic. It was routes and resources. And so during the World War II, the Japanese had Ianfu. Those were comfort women, and they worked out of Ianjo, which is what we would call brothels. And then way later, several decades later, that communist, Yoshito Seiji, comes up and says, hey, he was communist. He hated Japan because he's Japanese, but he hated Japan because he's Japanese. Look, American communists, what country do they hate the most? America. German communists, they hate Germany, right? Communists hate themselves. That's, I think, partly why they're communists, because they don't respect themselves. Like, I respect myself. I don't want to be communist. I'll make it on my own, right? I'll make it through working hard. I'll make it through delivering something that you want and need, and then you'll pay me for it, right? Because I respect myself enough to do that. Communists don't. They they're shaking people down. Their whole way of life is to shake people down, to commit fraud, the whole Marxist thing, all those totalitarians. They don't respect themselves, and they're predators. And these professional victims are always predators, and it gets baked into the firmware, and it's a loop. It's a death loop, because the more predacious they are, then people come after them more, and then they are victims, and then you know how this goes. It's a doom loop. And so, and the Koreans actually, I've told Japanese, they're like, what's Black Lives Matter? What's going on with this thing? And I said, well, if you want to know what Black Lives Matter is like, just look what's the relationship between some Koreans, not all. A lot. Koreans and Japanese tend to get along quite well, actually. But if you look at the information war, it looks like they're going to kill each other, because there are some Koreans, especially Koreans, that would definitely, because they've been trained to go after Japanese, especially Chinese are doing it. Actually, the Chinese and the Koreans think they can run each other. Both of them think the other one is their Pinocchio. Like, here's the Koreans think they can run the Chinese, and then the Chinese think they can run the Koreans. And actually, Chinese are doing a lot of that, and so are the Koreans. Look, they're like Pinocchioing each other, just like Zionists and Chinese. They're like Pinocchioing each other, in the English and the Zionist, and the English and the, I'm not talking English in particular, and in Chinese, they're Pinocchioing each other. And so they're fighting over those string power, string theory. There you go. And so the Koreans, though, when I've told Japanese, if you want to know about Black Lives Matter, just change that to Korean Lives Matter. And the behaviors are very similar. The Koreans were, until the Japanese annexed Korea, the Koreans were, downtrodden. And the women didn't even have names and that sort of thing. So, it was a very primitive society. Koreans don't want to hear that, but let's face it, it's true. But Koreans are, today, a lot of brilliant Koreans, very hardworking, very serious people, and very good soldiers. They're nothing to be trifled with. But they are confused. And look, they're always fighting each other like people do, not just Koreans, but humans. And but so if you want to know about what's going on with the comfort women issue, it's very similar to like Black Lives Matter. So I just say Korean Lives Matter. And I've told many Japanese, look at if you're trying to understand Black Lives Matter, Koreans are to Japanese the way blacks are to Americans, only there's a difference. The Japanese were much better to Koreans than many Americans were to blacks, much better, right? And it's not like every American was bad to blacks. It's completely untrue. There were a lot of Americans that were fighting against slavery and that sort of hardcore. It was Americans that freed the slaves, that other pre-Americans, and actually a lot of blacks had slaves too. That's inconvenient to mention. Indians had slaves, black slaves, and it goes on and on. It's never as simple as people would like it to make it out. Like, there was a lot of blacks had slaves in America, and Indians, and can't talk about that, or we're talking about it. And likewise with the Koreans. the people that kept Koreans down the most were Koreans. And that's just the way it is. The prisoner of war camps in World War II that Americans and others were in were mostly run by Korean Japanese soldiers. They were Koreans, right? So a lot of times when people talk about the cruelty towards Allied troops and POW camps in World War II were actually run by Korean. They were Japanese citizens, and they were wearing Japanese uniforms. Therefore, Japan is responsible. Just like the United States, we are responsible for anybody we stuff in an American uniform. If we pull somebody out of Afghanistan and we make him a captain in the U.S. Army, well, he's not Afghan anymore. He's American, and he's wearing our uniform, and whatever he does, we bear the responsibility for it, because that's how serious people are. Serious people that stay in quadrant 1 take themselves deadly seriously, like I do. Stay in quadrant 1. Help others, help yourself. Take responsibility. This is Japanese. Japanese are all about taking responsibility as a general statement. As a general cultural firmware, Japanese are all about, again, you can find many exceptions. They're a mile deep. But as a general cultural firmware explainer, the Japanese are all about taking responsibility for whatever you've done or not done. Whereas there are many cultures that are not like that. They're always, something went wrong, blame the foreigner, blame that guy, blame anybody but me, blame anybody, and so you'll see that a lot with Korean Lives Matter, right? Because in the Chinese who study cultural firmware, anthropological warfare is intense. It's very serious. My library is there's a huge amount about anthropological warfare. Masako and I spend a lot of time in here. I say my library, it's our library. You should see Masako's component, but it's Japanese. Mine happens to be mostly English and some German and others, but mostly English. And but the Korean Lives Matter is quite real. They actually have some very similar traits. You'll see Koreans in the DSM, what's it, Diagnostics and Statistics Manual, the psychological thing. I read an entire DSM one time, which is it's basically, once you're reading the DSM, you realize it's about all the psychological maladies, like whatever, arachnophobia or whatever, all the phobias and narcissism and all these different things, right? All these, fear of whatever, just many things that, forms of psychosis or whatever. And it's describing these and, and how do you basically, if you're a psychologist or a psychiatrist, how do you put your patient into this category? Okay, this is what my patient is suffering from, and these are the drugs. At some point you're going, wait a minute, this is actually, because I read the entire DSM many years ago before I went off to the wars. When I was tracking cannibals and I was I infiltrated one cult, and I was spent a lot of time with others. So when I was studying these cults and stuff, I was studying a lot about psychology. And so I read an entire DSM. It was fascinating. And in the DSM, there's actually a malady called that affects Koreans, and I wonder if it's still in the latest DSM. What DSM are they up to now? Like 9 or 10? I don't even know, but I don't know which one I remember reading, but it was like 25 years ago. And so, but the DSM, they had at least one of the issues. One of the editions actually had something about this Korean malady called hwabang. I think it's called, I don't know if I pronounced it right, hwabang. It's fire disease. And it's this thing that some Koreans get, and they just go crazy. They just get extremely angry, lose their mind, and just go absolutely crazy. And it's a cultural thing. It's not drugs. It's not, and there's different cultures that do this. And down in Malaysia, they call it, in Indonesia, they call it. I'm sorry, I've forgotten the word for it. It's a word that we often use, actually. But they'll just go crazy, like running with the evil spirit type thing, and they'll kill people. They'll kill the chickens, the cows, their grandmother, and they'll just go absolutely crazy, run amok. It's called amok, A-M-O-K, amok. In Bahasa language, it's called amok. And so, like, you'll see the British were describing this when they were starting to do their rolling around the world and, impinging upon foreign cultures that were basically almost from a different planet. Some people in Malaysia would run amok. You can go on YouTube and see people going amok. and or in Indonesia, and they go amok. And when they go amok, I mean, they'll just like kill everything. You know what I mean? And now, but you can look on YouTube, police going after somebody who's going amok, and they'll try to catch them with a net or whatever. They don't come and fill them full of holes if possible. They might have just killed 8 people. They'll just try to throw a net on them and try to, somehow catch them, because they're just running with the evil spirit. Once we get the evil spirit out of them, they're a good person. They just got the evil in them, and now they're going amok. And so it's fascinating, these anthropological things that you learn. Well, Hua Bang is sort of like that and similar, but you'll see also in some Americans, they call some Black Americans in some cultures. Of course, there's many, many Black cultures, just like there's many white cultures, there's many Asian cultures, but there are some that with one key word, boom, run amok, go crazy. And it's like a license. Can't control himself. Right. And it's terrible actually when people, the ultimate form of racism is giving people a pass because of their race. They're like, well, he doesn't like books because he's Black. It's like, hello. It's like there's some of the smartest people out there are Black. And you need to look at this the opposite way. They are very serious people, but when whatever you give a pass on and whatever, it's going to grow into that, because that's what life does. That's what if you give a tree a place to grow, it will grow there. And same with our firmware, same with our minds will take the shape of the container, which actually, which we have to be cautious of, because, the slave makers are constantly trying to keep us in containers, like these little bonsai plants. Some of these little bonsai trees, redwood trees can be kept this small. A redwood tree that could live for thousands of years and be towering, the biggest tree, the tallest tree in the world. You can keep it this small just by literally, you can buy one online. You can buy a bonsai redwood tree. It's the same with our psychology, right? So some of these things that people allow, they'll just be like, well, he can't help himself because he's Korean. I'm like, are you kidding? Koreans are some of the most serious people in the world. There's like, they should be astronauts. They are. I mean, they're super successful business people, super serious people. But then whenever you just give these things a pass, it will take a pass, And so anyway, so the Chinese who run this information war, the comfort women, what's the end state? What do they want with the information war? Different end states. The Chinese want to dominate. They want to conquer Japan, just in the way the United States has very much tried to take Japan. If we had a larger population, if we had more Americans, we would have manifested destiny ourselves right across this place, and it would be filled with white people right now. I'll guarantee it. I've studied this way too much to be under any illusions. We just didn't have enough population. But had we had more people, we would have manifested our destiny right here. And we did, actually. We just didn't do it to that level. And likewise, the Chinese, that's why I call it China Fest destiny. The Chinese they clearly want to take Japan. So obviously, I write about it many times in these books, as I recall. I think it's in these books. They're 10 years old. And so but I've written about it many times. I've been all over China, going to their museums, studying their information war in places like Panama or wherever. The Chinese are clearly growing in the way the British Empire and the Spaniards did, and we did, and because we're clearly contracting at this point. They sense it. When you're fighting somebody and you feel their energy slipping away, or your energy, you can feel that they seem to have more energy than you, more whatever, or that you have more. You can feel that when you're fighting, and they can feel it in us. We've got people that are out there that'll flip this off and go watch Joe Rogan smoking dope and think that he's actually, because he's got great guests, I should watch Joe Rogan. That is the sign of a weak mind. We have Americans who invest in companies who are clearly killing America, clearly investing in pharma because the farmers we're getting such good, even while the death jabs are going out and people knew they were death jabs, because you could make a profit. we're investing in it. That is quadrant 2. The thugs or the stupid people. Stupid and thugs. They're damaging people. Some are making money. Those are thugs. And some are killing themselves and killing others. Stupid, right? And so the Japanese are under attack. China wants to take this place. Now, the people that are carrying the water in the comfort women information war are mostly Koreans. And the Koreans don't realize they're under attack as well. When it comes to this Pinocchio thing, the Chinese are clearly the people running the comfort women issue. I've been over to Korea. I spent a lot of time in their offices, going to lunch with them, hanging out with them by the statue. For 3 weeks, I was out there, not night and day like they were. I would come and they would be singing to the comfort women statues. They got these comfort women statues. They're holding umbrellas over the statues. It's a cult. It's a straight up hardcore cult. I mean, if you say something bad about that statue, they'll kick your head in. I mean, they're singing to it. They're bringing it fruit. They're holding an umbrella. They're putting a scarf around it because it's cold. You know, they're literally 2:00 in the morning singing to the statue. You know, I'd come by and watch them. There they are. Still, you know, it'd be nuns, people, the Catholic, the Vatican's deeply behind it. I've been over to their seminary over in Seoul. They got a comfort women statue at the seminary. You know, they got a comfort. That might be this statue actually. They got one right in front of the Japanese embassy, or did at that time. I took that photo. I should remember where I took it from. But but I've been to so many of these statues. But the Koreans are being used as useful idiots to destroy themselves and destroy Japan. However, not all Koreans. Many Koreans see right through this because Koreans are sharp. As a whole, on the whole, they're very sharp people. So they're using, just like in America, they take our lowest denominators and use them against us. They do the same here in Japan. There's like Antifa Japan that are just like not your average Japanese guy. Just like in America, our Antifa are almost all drug addicts. And many of the women Antifa are straight up prostitutes in America. I've spent a lot of time with Antifa, straight up prostitutes. And they ain't comfort women. They are uncomfortable women. Tattoos on their faces type stuff, right? And so, but with the another thing that the comfort women people, they hate America. The people that push the comfort women issue, they hate Japan and they hate America, and a lot of them hate Korea, even though many are Koreans. It's clear that they hate Korea, and even though many of them are Koreans, when you actually talk with them, some do love Korea and some don't. But many hate Korea. They clearly hate Japan, and they hate the United States. That's why Trump was dismissing the comfort women information ploy, because the people that are pushing the comfort women issue, they want all U.S. presence out of Asia, period. That includes Japan, Korea. They want it out. Well, who wants us out? Who wants us out is China, because China wants to take, obviously, Formosa. They want to take Taiwan. And, when it comes to information war, by the way, again, how long was Taiwan part of China? When did the runaway province of Taiwan run away from China? When? There's a lot of experts out there. I know, unbelievable. Historians and whatnot, they'll be like, well, they did. And I'm like, okay, that's one of those. Koreans will tell me that the Japanese invaded Korea. And I'm like, okay. Japanese invaded Korea. Where? When? I mean, specifically. Let's get to the point. Like, where and when? Because I want to go there. I want to go there, and I want to find the statue, and then I'm going to backtrack and find the guy's family, and I'm going to, find the admirals in charge. I'm going to find his grandson and granddaughter. I'm going to interview him. You know what I mean? I want to know when and where. It didn't happen. It did not happen, right? It simply did not happen. And likewise, when it comes to Taiwan being the runaway province of China. Now, everybody knows Taiwan is a runaway province of China. When? It didn't happen. It's a lie. It's a stone cold lie. It never happened. Formosa was never, ever, ever, not for 1 second, part of China. Ever. There's not even a sliver of light coming under the door. There's no way to yes, it was because of, nope, never was. It just never was. And yet you'll have people saying that constantly. And they'll go, well, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about. And I'm like, actually, I do. And I'll be back in Taiwan soon, by the way, with Masako. And we're going to be there with Japanese and Taiwanese. And actually, I'm the first American they've invited. And the only reason they're inviting me is because I'm with Masako. That's it. Because otherwise it's a Taiwanese thing mostly. Anyway, many of the Taiwanese would rather be part of Japan today. Not all, but many. I've spent, significant time in Taiwan running around and different time periods. And in fact, one of them was investigating this comfort women issue, which Taiwanese don't really, they don't resonate much with because they tend to like Japan quite a lot. Countries over here in Asia that love Japan include Thailand and Taiwan. They tend to be very respectful of Japan. You would be led to believe that all the countries in Asia are fearful of Japan. They hate the idea that Japan will rise again, and all this is completely nonsense. I gave a speech in Tokyo in about 2014, and I asked this esteemed audience. They were a bunch of historians and journalists and things like that, and it was not actually a general audience, and there were people that would know the answer, and I said, I've traveled all over this world, and I've asked a lot of people about Japan and other countries, but I've only found 3 countries that hate Japan. Do you know what those are? And none of the Japanese could get the third one. They would say like Korea and China, and nobody could get it. And I'm like, Japan, nobody hates Japan like other Japanese, and it's the same in America. My country, the country I love and deeply respect for all of its faults, warts and all, is the United States. We've done some pretty messed up stuff, but on the balance, we've got a really deeply good side. And but the Japanese at that audience, they're like, right, it's true. It's Japanese hate Japan more than anybody on the earth, and it's the same in Germany. I lived in Germany for 4 years. Many Germans hate Germany because in the bonsai version of the psychological operations, they've been taught to hate their cultures. They've been taught to hate their past. Americans now, like in our universities, have been taught the same thing. Nobody hates America more than Americans. Many Americans anyway, because they've been brainwashed. They've been brainwashed to kill themselves. They've been brainwashed to think that somebody like Joe Rogan is actually a serious thinker. That's like really low IQ to think that Joe Rogan, and I keep mentioning him because he's the biggest podcaster out there. And if it were somebody else, I'd be mentioning that other person. But it is Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan pushes dope, right? And so, what is dope? Dope is the soil of this brainwashing. That's what dope is. Dope is where that's where all the nutrition, that's where all the poison comes from. And so now on the comfort women issue, the people that are siding with that issue are our enemies, straight up hardcore enemies. Don't treat them otherwise. Don't treat them as, hey, we got some common ground here. Got no common ground. I don't want common ground with you. Not at all. You're my enemy. You're carrying water for the enemy. You want to destroy the United States. You want to destroy Japan, and you want to destroy Korea. You are the Chinese Communist Party. The people running this, whether or not they're Korean and was born in Korea or born in Japan or born in Glendale, California, the people that are running this operation are trying to destroy our countries. They're trying to destroy the United States, destroy Japan, destroy Korea. They're trying to destroy Taiwan. They're trying to destroy these places. I went to 3 of these statues in Hong Kong as an example. Chinese Communist Party has now taken Hong Kong. And so the people that are running this operation are our enemies. This statue should not be in the park by the library in Glendale, California. It should be picked up and taken to the dump or melted down, make, horseshoes out of it or something. That statue should not be there. Now, every time something happens to the statue, this is the morphology of the comfort women issue. They'll put a statue in somewhere. They put it in Glendale. They put the statue in Glendale because the Armenians and others live there. So you can get the Armenians riled up and involved because they've got the genocide information war with the Turks, which is in service to some other stuff. That's in service to another corridor from the Caspian Sea and whatnot. But But so they put it there in Glendale, California, which I've been to quite a few times, talking with Armenians and whatnot there. And the Armenians are great people. I've been to Armenia with Chuck Holton and Masako, and I went there. We spent a lot of time there. I don't know, a month. It was quite a bit of time. And then we went up to Georgia, the neighboring country. And I love the Armenians. I tell you what, I wouldn't mind living there for a year or two. That's how much I loved Armenia. The Armenians are fantastic people. They're also being used in, there's a corridor that will go through there. They call it the Trump something corridor. Anyway, the Trump something about peace corridor. It's a corridor from the Caspian Sea through Azerbaijan, through Armenia over to Turkey, right? They call it TRIP. And so there's all these routes in the Caspian Sea. That area has been contentious since the edge of time. I mean, because it happens to be one of those stigmergic places where paths cross. That's why the war with Iran and all this stuff. It's all related to that. Anyway, separate topic, but related. But they put the statue, the Comfort Women statue in Glendale. They'll target the places they put it. It's not random. These people are very smart. They study the anthropological terrain, and they know, hey, in this place we can glomp on to, in California we can glomp on to the Holocaust, the Jewish Holocaust thing, and we can glomp on to the Armenians, and we'll glomp these all together, and we'll say this is the Holocaust of Asia is what they call it actually. Nanjing and this, they call it the Holocaust of Asia, right? And so that's why they do that. That's why it's there, because this is an industrial complex. This an information war industrial complex, and it's in service to routes and resources. So they want us out. The Chinese want us out of Asia. They want the United States out. Of course, the United States needs to be very tight with Thailand. It needs to be very tight with Japan. It needs to be very tight with Korea. But the Chinese are trying to split Korea, Japan, and United States and Thailand. And now the United States has been very helpful in splitting ourselves off from Thailand because of, like our former ambassador, Christy Kinney, had very public war fighting with her in 2014, and then she left her post early. I clearly stressed her out. You can look online and look up my name and Christy Kinney and look at the epic battles that we had that most people back in America didn't see, but Thailand all saw them. She was clearly destroying our relationship with Thailand. Thailand's a key relationship, and it's related here. It's routes and resources. China is trying to take Thailand, and they are partly behind this huge, and it's a Zionist fight too. The Zionists are also trying to take Thailand. They are setting up exclusionary zones. I mean, people from Israel are setting up exclusionary zones in Pai and Koh Phangan and Koh Samui. I've been to all these places, but not when the Thais are getting ready to kick the Israelis out of Thailand, because the Israelis are clearly coming over and they're making places where Thais are not allowed to go. And so this is the sort of thing that people are like, hey, wait, this is the way you treat those people in Gaza. Now we get it, right? So the Thais are starting to turn they're starting to turn, but what I'm getting to is these are the same forces fighting each other. They, that are trying to rip Thailand apart, pushing the drugs on Thailand hard. China has always pushed drugs into, especially opium, into Thailand. This goes back many generations. I say always. It goes back when it was called Siam, not even Thailand. The Chinese were pushing opium. And they were using that to try to overthrow the kingdom and make money for war. And the United States got involved, Green Berets, CIA, and all that. That's why northern Thailand is like a retirement zone for CIA and Green Berets that were up there, old guys now, that were fighting that. And, Thailand and the agency guys and Green Berets, they got along very good. So their relations are quite tight, actually. So they, because the old Green Berets and the agency people live up there, they're all intermarried and they love each other. You know what I mean? So it's not like that. There's no contention there. But but when it comes to the Israelis, let's say the Zionists actually, and the Chinese, they're clearly ripping Thailand apart. There are 20,000, according to a lawyer friend of mine in Bangkok, 20,000 cannabis licenses now in Thailand. And this all happened within about the last 4 years. Drugs is the biggest, let's say intoxicants, whether it be alcohol or cannabis or opium, these are the biggest weapons being used. Anyway, comfort women. that's what it was all about. The comfort women were all about the Japanese had prostitutes, or for them, it's not really prostitutes. They're called comfort women because a lot of them, they literally just wanted to talk and that sort of thing. And others did want to have sex or whatever, but but it's different. The culture is different. You can't understand it through an American lens, because it's a Japanese lens, which is very different. And although actually in some ways it's very similar to Scots Irish, weirdly, and like a lot of the things in Japan, I resonate very deeply with actually from my actual culture. I'm not adapting even. I'm like, I've got the same ways actually in many ways that are part of my actual deep American cultural firmware. It's quite, I mean, not on the comfort women issue, but on things like how you should treat people and that sort of thing. Honor and those sorts of things are quite similar. It's really interesting. And so that's what it's about. The comfort women is a malignant information operation. It's part of others. It's part of 731. It's part of, which is another information related campaign. It's part of the rape of Nanjing. They're all the same campaign, actually. So when you see the Nanjing thing and you're like, well, what about that? What about this? It's actually part of the same campaign. They're just different components of it. It's like, there's the Air Force doing their part of the attack. There's the Navy doing their part of the attack. There's the Army doing their thing. There's the agency people doing their thing. And, they're all part of the same monster, right? So when you see the Nanjing thing, you see the comfort women issues, you see the drugs, it's all part, the music, the weaponized music, it's all part of the same thing. All right, that was very long. I only plan to go like 10 minutes, but I hope I've explained it well enough. If not, leave comments. I'll try to answer them as best I can. I know this subject very well, so I can probably answer most questions.